Hi there. This video is about making these oh so popular leather wrap bracelets using one of these Czech glass mixes. And it can be a little bit difficult to do that because so many of these beads don't have holes that are large enough to pass your thread through twice. But you'll find that some of the mixes do indeed have some beads that meet that criteria. And we're going to work with those. I'm going to show you two different ways to do the stringing part of it. And then I'm also going to show you two different ways to start it and end it. Sometimes I start with a loop and end with a button. Other times I start with a button and end with a loop. And this particular one, I'm going to start with a loop and end with a button. I'm using 2mm leather. And these, I think, are probably about an 8mm fire polish that happened to be in the mix that I came with. A couple of things that you need to do. This is going to be a single wrap bracelet, so I pulled 24 inches of leather on my Eslon, and I'm using the Tex 210. I pulled 2 yards of that, which is 3 times 24. One thing you have to do is make sure that the button that you choose has a hole that's big enough for whatever size leather you're using to pass through. And this is where it's kind of good if I had I'm going to go down through the top, but so solve that problem. Next thing you need to do is when you make your loop, make sure that the loop is large enough to pass over the button. And this button's going to have a knot on the top of it, so I kind of like the loop to be a little bit larger because it's going to have to pass over a knot at the end as well. Okay, so let's set the button and the beads out of the way. And I always use the macrame board for this. It just works for me. I like the way it holds everything. Each one of these squares is a 1/2 inch. I'm going to make a 6.5 inch bracelet. So putting that at the top, coming down to where that knot is, I'm just going to pin this onto the board where the knot is. And I use silk pins for this. The reason I use that is because they have extra sharp points on them, and they go through just about anything that I want to put them through. Leather's tough, but you can get it in there. I don't think that one went quite through yet. There we go. All right. Now what I'm going to do is bring the ends down to the bottom and put them in side-by-side notches. So now I'm ready to start. Let's see if I can get you in the... So I'm going to take the Eslon, and I've already made a mistake. What I do when I start with the loop is I bring the Eslon through the knot to start it with. So I have stiffened the ends of this Eslon with nail polish. There we go. Then I can even that up, but the key is to get that in there to start with. Now I'm going to stick it back on the board. So I'm going to put that at the top and then just pin this on. Okay, hooking the ends down here at the bottom of the board. And I'm going to even the ends of this up. And pull that so it's on center. Now we're good to go. Now before I put my first bead on, what I like to do is come up through from both sides and tie a knot. Oops. That's what happens when you've got lots of cord. And this is why I hate pins. All right. So there. So now I have a knot that's centered, and when I bring these around from the inside, the bead's going to sit right in there. So going to bring this in, and I may have to put my magnifiers on in order for this to happen. So let me go over here and get those. Alrighty, so I'm going to pick up a bead and I'm going to bring that in from that direction. I'm going to put this under the stringer on this side and bring it in from the opposite direction. And then I'm just going to pull the two ends and bring that bead up so that it's going to sit in the middle of the leather. There we go. So if you think of it, these are the stringers of your ladder and this is the rung of your ladder. So that's why it's called a ladder stitch. And it's basically just, again, coming in and under from both sides so that both of your cords are coming up in the middle, and then just stringing your bead on the cord from opposite ends. And what you'll need to do is, depending upon what size bead you have in your mix, you might need anywhere from, I don't know, 10 to 15 beads, depending upon how long you want your bracelet to be. And that just snugs right up. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to put you on hold until I'm ready to finish this. So again, I'm coming under the outsides. I'm going to put the left-hand thread going in on the left-hand side of the bead, and the right-hand thread coming in on the right-hand side of the bead. And then I'm just going to pull the two ends of the cords, and there it goes. And I'm just going to continue that until I have enough length, and then I'll come back. Okay, so when I was working with this, what I found was I wasn't going to have enough of this bead to make the entire length that I wanted. And that will happen working with these mixes. You don't have a control over how many and what size bead you're going to get. So what I did was I just backed it out to a little bit beyond center, put 3 different beads as a focal piece in the center, and then just went ahead and finished it. Now, I've got the length that I want. What I have to do is, normally, if the hole in the button were large enough for me to pass both the leather and the S-Lon through the hole in the button, that's what I would do. This button is tight because I'm using a 2mm leather, and normally I would use a 1.5mm, but this was the color that I happen to have in stock to match the beads. So we make adjustments as we go along. So what I'm going to do now is I need to tie off the S-Lon, and I'm going to tie it in a surgeon's knot. And a surgeon's knot is nothing but a square knot with an extra loop on the second one. So the first knot is right over left. And just pull that in. Now this is the second half of your square knot, which is left over right. Bring that tail through. And now bring that tail through one more time. And that makes it a surgeon's knot. What that means is it tends not to want to come undone. So what I have to do before I tighten that all the way up is go back and snug this down. And then I'm just going to grab these ends and snug that down. Now, before I trim that, I would glue it. But I'm ready to do the button now. Now, if I had a flank button, I could easily just pass the leather through the flank and make a knot on the bottom. But when I do this particular type, I happen to love these buttons that have the 2 holes, because what it does is it lets me make that square knot on the top, and it becomes part of the design. So again, the square knot is right over left, left over right. And again, I'm going to glue that before I trim it. But you can see now what you have is a bracelet that when you bring it together, the loop will pass over the button and make your closure. And that's just one way of doing these. What I'll do on the next video is show you a different way to line up your beads, and we'll start with the button and end with a loop.